Pittsburgh Steeler fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor behind thesteelcurtain.com, with you for another episode of the Steelers Preview, where we preview whatever we want at this point in the offseason. We're going to talk about whatever we want. So buckle up, baby, as they say in the Pittsburgh Penguins realm. It's time to talk with the triumphant trio. Dave Schofield, what's going on, Dave?
Oh, I almost busted into our signature ending of our show after reliving that origin story on Wednesday with Let's Ride. It's going well. I'm ready to talk to my buddies about some Steelers stuff.
That's what it's all about. Bryan Anthony Davis, what's up, Bryan?
I still have Olympic fever, but Olympic fever does not touch the Pittsburgh Steelers even in the offseason.
These Olympics just aren't doing it for me.
I enjoy it.
They're not. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. This week, everyone's been talking about it on our PM shows. The news that Pat Meyer, oh my gosh, Pat Meyer. Can you believe they hired Pat Meyer? That guy's such a schmuck. Pro Football Focus told me so. That guy. So yeah, they hired this guy. And I felt like it all stems, and I wrote this article for the website, it all stems and comes down to the age-old debate. Which is more value, coaches or players? That's the question. And so for me, I even had someone on Twitter when I wrote this article that ran 7 o'clock on Thursday a.m. Eastern time. Someone on Twitter said that position coaches are almost more important than coordinators and head coaches outside of game day. I was like, well, that's a little much for me. But I want to ask you all, Bryan, let's first talk about this. How important are position coaches in your opinion?
I think they're important, but you have to have the horses to be able to use your plan. Sorry, I got all flustered there. I apologize.
Seattle has 2 losses
already.
Execute.
Only 2 minutes in.
Let me try that again. Jeff, Dave, that's a great question. And you know what? Coaches are important. Position coaches are very important, but you need to have the horses to be able to execute your plan.
Yeah, I agree. Dave, what do you think about that, just in terms of how important are these position coaches?
When you have a really great position coach and really great players at that position, and they are just blowing everyone away, it makes you get this lofty expectation of how these things work. And the Steelers have had this with various position coaches and players throughout their history. So it's the infamous chicken salad reference, with a coach. There could be a coach that could be the best position coach in the NFL. And if he just doesn't have the players to work with it, you could say, oh, well, they could coach them up. You know what? You can coach me up all you want. I'm still not going to be able to throw a football 30 yards. I'm just not. But you're like, but these are professionals and they can get there. You can see drop-offs in things. People get upset that, oh, wow, the Steelers, what are they going to do if this person goes down? We don't have someone like that behind. You think everybody has another TJ Watt sitting on the bench ready to go in if he gets hurt? No. There's obviously different levels of players. So if you don't have the players, it doesn't matter how great the coach is. And if you have good players and you don't have a very good coach, it's really hard for them to overcome things that could be holding them back in that realm as well. So it really is the two things coming together.
Good coaches can get the best out of their players. And like you said, there's differing levels of players. You have the super athletes, the pros, basically. And then you also have those players that are middle of the road players, but you can still get the best out of them. That's, I think, what a good coach does. But nonetheless, like Bryan said, you got to have the horses. Now let's talk about the other side of this debate. And that is when you think about the blame game, because that's what this all comes down to. It comes down to the blame game. Who are you blaming when things go south? Whether it's a lack of production, like the Steelers running game, whether it's a loss, it doesn't matter. Do you blame the coaches or do you blame the players? Bryan, we'll start with you.
Like Dave said, like we tried to talk about here, that you can have the best game plan in the world, but if you can't move those guys out of the way on the offensive line, Najee Harris is not going to get going. So you cannot. It's the players for me, you cannot have subpar players executing a great plan. Now, somebody on the live chat said, hey, Belichick gets a lot out of average players. He's probably the only guy. But for me, and that's true, but there's not a lot of Belichick's around. When you look at everybody's favorite to come back, and everybody wanted Mike Munchak to come back, and you can ask yourself, what would have Mike Munchak done with these guys in 2021? I mean, I don't think he would have done much more. And you saw it in Denver, where their line was not very good because they did not have the players. They did not have good enough players. Now, you know, this guy that's coming in, Pat Meyer, Oscar Meyer, I don't care what his name is. It doesn't matter. They looked at this guy, they looked at his credentials, they talked to him, they thought he could be a good fit. But the problem with Steeler Nation, we want brand name. We want Levi's. We want 501 button washed, button fly, stonewashed jeans if we're in the 80s. You know, we want that. We don't want Costco brand. You know, we just don't want if you're from the 80s, you don't want rustlers. You know, but guess what? They work just fine. So this guy's not a brand name, and everybody was complaining because it wasn't somebody that they knew. But Bill Cowher, when he was hired, I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. He's got a funny mustache. Great. We just hired Magnum PI. We hired this kid. You know, and then next thing you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this man. And it was like 3 months later, I'm like, this guy is awesome. So, you know what? We want the brand name, but you're not always going to get the brand name. And the brand name is not always best for what you need.
Would Zubas be a brand name? Is that okay, or are those not?
Zubas, the Joey Buttafuoco pants. Remember, he used to wear those.
I
had a couple pair.
I have a pair. I had pairs when I was younger, and my brother bought me a pair of Steelers Zubas not too long ago.
Man, if they gave him size, I would be all over that.
I was in my grunge phase when Zubas were out. Oh yeah, man! I was wearing Doc Martens, shorts, an overcoat, and
Junko jeans.
Gosh,
that might have been after your time, Brian. You were probably
I don't know. I mean,
by then
I was Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all Stone Temple Pilots and all that stuff for a little bit. So,
what year was your trial marriage?
The starter wife. That was 1999 to officially 2003, but you know that kind of fell apart when other dudes were showing up around 2001.
All right, so I was in high school.
We keep it real here, my friend. We keep it real.
Dave, what do you think about the coach versus player debate?
All I know is that sometimes you can just have that team that you just don't have the experience, you don't have the talent, you don't have the size, and you just expect that team to go out there and get trounced every week. And then all of a sudden, those ragtag bunch of 4th and 5th graders have the two best coaches that they could possibly have and find themselves winning a game at the buzzer that was never to be expected.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I heard about this. The Men in the Hills were singing songs about the 16-16 tie.
No.
It was a 14-16 win.
16-14 victory.
Oh.
Yes. So, if you want to know more about this story, you can listen to Jeff's Let's Ride on Friday morning.
I cannot wait.
Yes, it's actually rather entertaining.
No, but back to answer the question. I mean, some coaches can get more out of their players. I was, until we finally did, I was under, I made this statement about Andy Reid a lot. I always have thought Andy Reid was a good coach. And I said, the biggest problem with Andy Reid is that he gets more out of his players than he should. And therefore they're not drafting high enough to get better players. And it's not like they're going to improve because they're already getting so much out of it. And it's really hard for him to break through. He finally broke through. with that. I mean, that seemed like that was a problem, and that can be a problem with certain coaches. When you get so much more out of your players than what you should, then all of a sudden they're needing bigger contracts and you can't spend on free agency, or do you have to let your players go and then they're not as successful somewhere else? Wait a second, this is starting to sound a little bit familiar when you think about these things. So sometimes you could actually overcoach your players, and you can have a guy named Duck actually put you on the verge of the playoffs and things like that, that you get more out of your players, and it's harder to build that way because of that reason. But part of what you can do is then you get this expectation that players are better than what they really are because they're actually being overcoached. And then there are sometimes, if you really want to check out something, Jeffrey Benedict and I had a Vertex article at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. It was out on Thursday, and it looked at how Juju Smith-Schuster, since Ben Roethlisberger came back, between them not being able to connect and how the Steelers were utilizing him, really wasn't living up to what he could do. It can work both ways. You can overcoach players, or you could take players and have to pigeonhole them into something else other than what brings out the very best in them.
Devlin Hodges is in the CFL, isn't he?
Yeah. Not even the USFL.
He is on a Canadian Football League roster.
I don't even think he was the starter, was he?
The Hamilton Red Hawks or something like that. The Ottawa Roughhousers or something.
Roughnecks or something. I don't know.
Ottawa Red Hawks.
It does either way.
Yeah.
Think about his career trajectory. I mean, a camp arm somehow gets on the practice squad. Injuries happen, elevated, wins a bunch of stupid games. Yeah, it kind of falls off towards the end of the season. Then he goes to the Rams, am I right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With the Rams, then obviously he goes to Canadian football. But I mean, think about, like you said, where he was with Pittsburgh. He was a sensation. My gosh. Everyone had duck fever, duck season. That's all they talked about. I always go back to when we talk about coach versus players. It's the age-old saying that the coaches get too much blame when they lose and not enough credit when they win. And that's I believe that. And I, honestly, goodness, if anyone's ever coached any sport, high school or up, you know that there are teams that you have that are just not as good. You could do the best job ever. You could be that Bill Belichick of your sport in your area, in whatever, and you're never going to win the games. But if you take your skill set over to that team across town that has that great feeder pattern and everything, and they're just loaded, heck, you'd win a state title. It's just the way that it is, and it's the way that it works out sometimes. I still just think that the Steelers coaching staff, let me ask you all this since we're talking about coaches. Does it irk you a little bit or make you
and we're back.
Make you kind of wonder what's going on, that they have one of the smallest coaching staffs every single year, no matter what? Like, when you hear that, what does that tell you? Brian, we'll start with you.
It tells you that the head coach is keeping it close. And they feel that he could do so much more. There's been, now I'm not subscribing to this. I'm just reporting the news. And there's people out there saying that, well, because he has a small staff, he wants to keep control. And when Pat Meyer was coach, they're like, all right, bad hire. And now he just wants to keep the coaches down and under him and let everybody know who's the man. And I don't believe in any of that. But what I'm saying is that it's probably a small group by design by the coach for whatever reasons that Mike Tomlin wants it to be.
Now, Jerry Dulac, our buddy Jerry Bear, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he paints a pretty dire picture of the Steelers, and a very cheap picture of the Steelers in his weekly chats. If you ever read his answers, that one of the reasons why they don't have a big coaching staff is why they're cheap. They don't want to pay them. That's what he says, not me. That's what Jerry Dulac said. You can check it out for yourself. But Dave, when you hear that the Steelers coaching staff is one of the smallest in the National Football League, what comes to your mind?
Well, the reason that they come off being cheap is because they spend so little money on their coaches, but that's only because they have so few of them. Obviously, if you had more coaches, that would be more salaries, and then you would spend more. But with them having a small staff, Mike Tomlin's always been the kind of person that doesn't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen. He feels like you could have too many people. You don't want too many people in the ear of your quarterback all at once. That's why sometimes they'll keep that down. Whether that's right or not, that's his philosophy. So whether or not he needs to delegate more, whether or not he's already a great delegator, whether or not those types of things, that too many cooks in the kitchen line that I've heard him say before is just something that stands out to me more than anything.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what the Steelers do this offseason. So they're going to have to bring in an outside linebackers coach. I just don't see them telling Terrell Austin to do what Keith Butler did, or to ask Jerry Olszewski to work with the outside linebackers. I'm assuming they're going to bring in an outside linebacker coach. But do they replace Terrell Austin's old position as the senior secondary, whatever that crazy title was that he held? I don't know. People always want to find something to nitpick about the Steelers. That's just the fan base. That's what they like to do. It's like their favorite pastime. No, it's not baseball. It's picking on the Steelers for some reason or the other. But Bryan, let me ask you another question. This was kind of a topic I talked about on, I think it was Monday, or maybe it was, I don't know. It was all about how you have to have hope and faith in the Steelers organization. And that faith and trust is what equates to hope. Can you say right now, Bryan, that you have hope in the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers? And if so, why?
Absolutely, with a capital A and a lot of exclamation points. And here's the reason why. Because this is a team that, and we keep going back to 2019 and talking about Doug Hodges and Mason Rudolph and that team, the team that the Miami Dolphins traded Minkah Fitzpatrick to because they did not think this team was going to win another game. They had better offers for Minkah Fitzpatrick, but they went with the Steelers because they thought the Steelers were going to have a horrible season when Ben Roethlisberger went out. And that did not happen. This was a team on the verge of the playoffs. A 3-game losing streak at the end kept them from doing it. So if a team like that a team can do that, you've got to have hope. If you look at 8-8 being the worst record that Mike Tomlin has ever had in 15 seasons in Pittsburgh, you've got to have hope. When you go back to years like 2002 and 1989 and 1984, teams that had no business being in there. Go back to 1992, Bill Cowher's first year. Sports Illustrated had them at 4-12. But this is an organization that I don't care what Rooney is up top. It's still the Rooneys. It's still a culture. It's still a team that worst record in the last 15 years is 8-8, and other teams would kill for that to be their worst record. Yeah, I have hope because I know what they can do. I know the culture. I know how they do things, and I know that it always works out. But what I do know is that a 9-7-1 record is horrible for a lot of fans, because when you have 4 Super Bowls in the 80s, you have 2 more Super Bowls in the 2000s. People expect it. And there's a lot of people that will think that a team that loses in the AFC Championship game or loses in the playoffs is a losing horrible season in Pittsburgh, because they expect a Super Bowl or bust every single year, and they don't get it.
Dave, I want to throw it over to you about hope. You have hope in the Steelers' future, and if so, why?
I'm sorry, I was having flashbacks to Peter Pan, faith, trust, and pixie dust, or whatever it was you were trying to say. I don't
even know what you're talking about. I've never seen
We Can Fly. Sorry. Coach, you have 5 kids. What are you talking about?
They're really into the Mighty Ducks right now. Just saying.
Okay. That's all right. What was the question again? No, about having hope.
Yes.
There's just I think trust is the big thing. If you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're talking about this team, this organization, you have to trust in what they're doing. It's so funny how what fans love about the Steelers, they also criticize about the Steelers. this team is a rock. This team, we've had 3 head coaches since 1969. Yes. And then they'll turn around and say, sometimes you just need some fresh ideas. You don't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You can't say you need fresh ideas, but part of what makes the Pittsburgh Steelers such a good organization, and that no one else has won more Lombardis than they have, is the fact that they are stable. Then all of a sudden you turn around and want them to do something contradictory to that nature because you just want it. So you have to trust in them. And you're right. They do sometimes break that trust a little bit. That you're like, oh, well, we trusted that this was going to happen and it didn't come through. Guess what? One team does not win the Super Bowl. Sorry, the same team does not win the Super Bowl every single year. Obviously, one team wins it every year, but only one team wins it. And it's not the same team every year. Things aren't, for 31 of those teams, things are not going well. But the Steelers are one of those teams that every single season, when you're getting down to the last couple weeks, they are still a team that is talked about as being in contention. And sometimes it just takes being in contention. Did we expect 2 number 4 seeds to meet in the Super Bowl this year? No, we didn't, because you just got to be there and get going. So the fact that the Steelers are always in the mix should allow you to trust that they are doing something to make that happen.
Our own Matty Peveril gives us $7.99 in dingo dollars. Yeah, only winning Super Bowls is the Steelers, though. That's what they say success is. So it's damn fair that fans come to expect that as the standard. So I was going to follow this up. And Bryan, I'll throw it over to you. What about the Steelers, though, has caused you to say, boy, they have burned me, though? Like, what is something that, because it has happened to everyone. We're all fans. We all have experienced the gut punches. What is it about the Steelers? Though? Yeah, we do have faith and we do trust the Steelers will make the right decisions. But what about this team maybe gives you pause a little bit? That's okay to say, by the way.
A lot of the time in the big spots, not going outside of the organization, the Randy Fichtner thing burned me like crazy. That was just a typical move, and I hated it.
The hiring and firing.
It really set this the hiring. It set this team back a few years. It really did. So that kind of stuff, even the Adrian Clem thing, they probably with the assistant coaches and holding on to a lot of these guys way too long, that's a problem. And we go back to, the topic of the show was coaches. What's more important, really, coaches or players? And we realize that you need to have players, but when you talk about coordinators, you need to have a great scheme. You need to have a better scheme. And so I give Matt Canada a pass because we haven't seen his scheme the right way yet. Now, this year, if it's going poorly this year, then you're going to be like, start getting that itch to like, all right, maybe he's definitely not the right guy. We're probably going to feel that way. But that's kind of what burns me a little bit, just where you're just bringing the recycling guys, just keeping on hiring from within and just not really going for it as much. But one thing that everybody talked about them being conservative, and Kevin Colbert has changed that the last few years as far as trading players and bringing guys in that moves that, the Steelers will never do that. Well, Kevin Colbert started doing that. And now there's hope that stuff will be, that kind of move can be made. And it's been done. So, you feel better about that. The fact that the organization has come out of the dark ages. So that's the one thing that doesn't burn you, that makes you feel better. But if you asked me a couple years ago, that's probably what I would say is they're not open to bring guys in. And now it's the fact that they're keeping guys around way too long. And I'm talking coaching.
Very interesting. Good stuff. Isaac Aguilera, longtime viewer and listener of our podcast. He gives us $5. Thank you very much for the tip. He says, Got a 1.5 hour drive back home. Hope you guys planned a long one. Go Steelers.
Hey, there's plenty of stuff you can listen to on the audio side.
That's
plenty
true.
of good stuff. If you haven't check out, if you haven't listened to Let's Ride, either of them yet this week, or Stat Geek, or lots of good shows that you have that you can listen to when this one's done. Can I say something about the Canada thing?
You can say whatever you want.
Because Brian had brought up Matt Canada and everything. Whether it's Matt Canada or not, people need to understand what he represents and why he was brought in when he was. Matt Canada represents a change in style. That whether it's Matt Canada or he moves on, or the Steelers move on from him and it's somebody else, it's probably going to be a different style that is more like what the NFL was trending towards. The Steelers just braced themselves to transition into a different type of style when they still had their aging quarterback that was around from the quote unquote older style, meaning from when he was first there. So the whole idea that you're transitioning into this other thing Matt Canada could resign tomorrow, or the Steelers could fire him, and they're going to replace him with someone else with similar philosophies. When it comes to offense, the Steelers are basically making a transition in that direction, and you'll see it a little bit more each year. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, Dave, keep the go ahead and keep the baton and answer the question about what about the Steelers might chap your what. Like what kind of bothers you about the Steelers organization?
Oh, see, to me, what chaps me more than anything is Steelers fans, but that's not where we're going.
We could have 15 straight shows about Steelers fans and how they bother us sometimes. Yes. So
go ahead. Let's see. Brian hit on so many different things there that you could say. Sometimes it's a narrative though that you don't really know if it's really the case. Like the whole idea of being cheap with the coaches, that could really bother you. But is that really what's going on? Is that really true? And that's the thing with the Steelers. So I don't know that there's something there that really. Before last season and before they signed TJ Watt the way that they did, I would say that they stick to the old school plan of how they're doing contracts. When if you want to entice players to stick with your team or come to your team, that you are so stuck in your ways of doing things that I think it will hurt you with players coming in. That's probably the thing that would bother me the most. But with TJ Watt, we saw that being a little bit different. I don't know if that's going to be the exception or the rule moving forward. So we'll see.
I don't have any complaints about the Steelers organization. Just win a flipping playoff game. Can you please? Like, that's my biggest gripe. Like, that's what really gets me hot under the collar is when I bet you have all the success and you can talk about Mike Tomlin's, and that's getting it. And I'm not the one that said this, but I agree with him. Knight Rider said it in the live chat. That whole narrative is getting kind of stale for me. I know it's impressive, but the whole non-losing season thing, like, okay, but you haven't won a playoff game since 2016, 2017. Like, we have to start as fans expecting at least a winner. I mean, Dave said you got to be in the mix, and they have been in the mix. They're not doing anything when they get in the mix. That's what really bothers me about this. It's also the fact that the defense is giving up like 40 points in the playoffs. Offense is turning the ball over. It's just so sloppy in the game that matters the most. That's what bothers me about the Pittsburgh Steelers organization right now. But it is what it is. We're always going to have hope. I think a good Steeler fan always does kind of have hope. I wanted to do something we haven't done in a while here. And I wanted to open up the show for some questions. So
I had a game to play too. So we can do some questions first, but I was going to do something as trivia, but I was going to do something else as a game too.
Oh, well, okay. But, I didn't know that.
I forgot to tell you about that.
Well, okay. A lot of people always say, like, y'all don't answer questions from the live chat.
Let's do a few questions.
I was like, okay.
This won't take long.
Let's do some questions. Let me put it in here. All right, so questions on the show, Facebook or YouTube, anyone that's watching live can go ahead and fire away, and we'll answer some questions, whether it's a question about Dave's hat and how it actually is a Steelers hat and not a.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people think it looks just like a random. It's just one hypocycloid is gold.
Yes.
So
can I answer something from the live chat that was earlier? It was about Stat Geek. Was they said it got cut off at the end. We were aware of that situation and we reloaded it. I don't know if it reloaded on every platform. It was not our doing. It was something with on the not even it definitely wasn't Brian, Jeff, myself.
No.
It was just something. I'm not even sure on which end, but it was above us. But it was fixed on most places. I know it's good in Apple Podcast. If not, you could always go to the article at behindthesteelcurtain.com and you could click on it if you need the last about 8 minutes or so of the show.
All right, let's get to some of these questions. We're gonna do these rapid fire, so get ready. All right, here we go. Greg W. Will Canada's offensive philosophy be inclusive of Rudolph's abilities, Brian?
Probably, yeah. I think he'll adapt to it, but Rudolph is probably a lot better at adapting to that than Ben Roethlisberger at 39 would have been.
Dave,
somewhat.
I don't think people should look at the Detroit Lions game and think that's what it's going to be. He was told on Saturday he was starting on Sunday. They did not have a game plan in place for Mason Rudolph. Keep that in mind. And here we go, James Galloway. How much for the BJ Finney pants, Bad? Are they on the market? Are you still wearing those at bed, or is those like your pajamas? I didn't know what your deal was with those.
They're size 38, which
fit in those not too long ago.
Yeah, and I'm about to again.
Around the world.
I just dropped 25, so I mean, I'm hoping to get back into them.
Good job.
But I would like to get another pair, so make me an offer and you can have them.
Isaac Aguilera, 1 year for Mariota, draft a quarterback next draft. Hey, if you listen to my Let's Ride podcast, I'm all about it. Let's bring in Mariota. Let's see what he does, but I'm not overpaying for him either. But Brian, what do you think?
He was $3.5 million last year on a one year deal. I'd pay $5 million for the guy, and I would bring him in for. I mean, I think he'd be a perfect bridge.
Dave,
he's a guy that you could overly offer him that much and say you have a chance to earn the starting job. I don't look at him as much like a lot of people were like Jimmy G. No, you don't want to give the draft capital to change. He's not worth the $24 million, and he's not that much of an upgrade than what you have. That's the thing you want to look if you're going to spend. If you're going to spend more than what Rudolph costs now, make sure it's an upgrade.
Yeah, we'll see. We shall see. Steeler Nation 412, would you rather want Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett? And if yes, why? I'll go first. I do want Malik Willis over Kenny Pickett because I think if he's going to have to wait a year anyways, you'll get him into the system, and I think he's a dynamic playmaker. I watched some film of him this week. I like what I've seen so far, but Brian, what do you think?
I'd rather not have any of them, but if I'm taking one, I'm taking Malik Willis because of exactly what you said. What I saw in the Senior Bowl from both guys was not impressive.
Dave?
This week, I would take Willis. I don't know if it would be the same answer 3 weeks from now, but I definitely don't want to have to move out of 20 for either one of them.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Maddie Peveril, what jersey are you wearing this year, Jeff, with no Ben? It's a good question. I won't be wearing a jersey until I find a player that I really, really like that I want a jersey. So I'll just wear a shirt or something, or maybe I'll just wear a Ben Roethlisberger jersey because people still do that, even though they're not playing. Andrew Wilbar, our own Andrew Wilbar, he thankfully didn't jump off the bridge this week when Pat Meyer was hired. We're all thankful for that. He said, do you move Dan Moore or Dotson to the right side this year? Brian, what do you think?
If you're moving anybody, it's Dan Moore, but you got to have a pretty good reason for it.
Okay. Dotson did play on the right side in college. Just keep that in mind. But Dave, what do you think?
Only if absolutely necessary. People between wanting to move Ryan Shazier to safety years ago and everything, everyone wants to move someone from where they are, thinking that they're just magically going to be better. I was all in favor of them moving Matt Filer from tackle to guard. And like I said before, even though he was better at guard this year in I almost said San Diego, and for the powder blue team, he still didn't grade out as high as he did at tackle for the Steelers. So sometimes even when you think you're moving someone to where they'll be stronger, they're not.
I still remember the whole Shazier to safety thing. Gosh, that drove me up a wall.
Oh, my goodness.
Scott Mitchell, odds of Tuitt playing at least one regular season snap this year in 2022. What do you think, Brian? Does he play or not?
1 in a million. I don't think he's playing.
Wow. Okay, Dave, you agree or disagree?
So you're telling me there's a chance? The problem is it's so all or nothing. He's either going to be back and better than ever in full force, or he's going to be not at all. There's nothing in between. So to me, it's either hundreds of snaps or zero. Right now I'd lean towards zero, but I'm not really strong one way or the other.
I think he plays. Tyler W., what's more likely, win 10 games or draft a quarterback next year? Brian, what do you think?
Win 10 games.
Dave, that's a tough question.
Can I answer both? No. Let's go. Let's go win 10 games. Yeah.
That's a tough question. I'm going to say they draft a quarterback. because they're going to win 11 games. Anyways, Richard Adamson says, do you think that they build up the right side of the offensive line? Goodness, I hope so. But Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, they need to. Richard, I think they're going to upgrade that line not only in free agency, but in the draft. I think you're going to see at least 2 offensive linemen drafted, and somebody's coming in via free agency.
Dave?
I'm not saying right side, left side, middle side. You need to build that defensive line somewhere, and you likely can't build. Did I say defensive? Yeah. Offensive line somewhere, and you probably can't do it all in one offseason. You really can't. But you have some things in place things that were strengths, if they end up being your weaknesses, that's a good thing. If you can give me a minute, I know this isn't rapid fire, but if anyone reads Steelers.com, Bob Labriola, he said something about Kevin Dotson not playing nearly as well this year as he did the year before. Well, the problem was he was playing between 2 rookies, and he was still not playing bad. And I mean, he was talking about if Dotson doesn't improve at all, he might not make it through training camp. And I'm like, he was playing between 2 rookies. If you have Dotson playing with guys that are stronger than him on each side, my goodness, what do you expect? But instead, he's playing with guys that are getting their first NFL experience. They need to get better everywhere. It doesn't have to be everywhere, but it needs to be improvement in multiple places. And I'm not even set on which place it has to be.
Okay. That's good.
Rant over.
That's okay. 2 questions that were similar. I'm going to throw them up one after the other. Dust Thunder says, do you think the Steelers should get a veteran like Adam Thielen? I didn't know he's available to lead the way for the younger guys. And then Brian Brown says, do you think I had to say this because Rico. Anthony Miller and Cody White are good enough to fill the receiver void next year. What do you think the Steelers have to do at receiver? Brian, go ahead.
I would love to see a veteran come in. Rico Bussey, Anthony Miller, Cody White, one of them could probably come in. If you have all 3, you're in trouble.
Dave?
They need more than what they have under contract now. They need it, whether it's signing some of their own or signing somebody else. I'm not going to go into specific players that are available because I don't even know who they are. But you can't go with just Claypool and Johnson. And then the other guys like listed there, you're going to need at least one more in one way or the other.
I like those guys because as like 4 wide receiver 4 or 5, so you need another wide receiver 3. That's the important thing. George Rice must be from Wheeling, West Virginia. He says Jeff Parker Central, Wheeling Central Catholic High School. Thank you very much. Graduated 2001. Get your Wheeling Park nastiness out of here. I hope you went to Central too. All right, let's see here. Let's go one more. We'll go one more, then we go to Dave.
One more after this, though.
Okay, after this. We're doing the best we can. Knight Rider 16, do you think coaches would like Malik Willis this much if he was a part of last year's draft class? Great question. Brian, what do you think?
I have no idea. I really don't. I really didn't think they were going to take a quarterback last year either. So, it's a possibility, but they were gearing up for Ben Roethlisberger last year. So I don't know if he would be a positive. I don't know if I'm even answering the question right. All I know is this is just tough for me.
Who were the quarterbacks last year is what you have to figure out. So we had the number 1 pick, Trevor Lawrence. You had the guy that went to the Jets. He went, what's his
Zach Wilson.
Zach Morris.
Trey Lance.
From Saved by the Bell. Yeah. Trey Lance. Who else went in the first
Mac
round?
Jones.
Mac Jones. Good call.
At 15.
And Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And Justin Fields.
Yeah,
5
Justin Fields,
first-round quarterbacks were selected last year.
In the top 15.
So would Malik Willis, would people still like him this much with that group?
Probably, yeah. I think he would have been in that mix. He might have pushed Mac Jones down a little bit.
I wouldn't have put him any higher than 4 in there.
But we never saw Trey Lance going where he did either, though.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But would you were in love with Trey Lance? Is your love this year for Malik Willis more than it was for Trey Lance last year?
First and foremost, I have not declared my love for Malik Willis yet.
Exactly, that's my point.
I will say that he is more dynamic than Trey Lance.
I'm not sure. So
Trey Lance was a good opportunity. That's what I thought. A good quarterback that didn't play that year because the season was canceled. Maybe he falls to the Steelers and they could get their quarterback of the future. It was literally just the situational aspect of things. Malik Willis is a different beast, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave. What's your question that you want to get?
I wanted this one.
Okay, go ahead.
If Kendrick Green is training with Pouncey, is it possible to think the Steelers will let him stay at center next season?
Well, I mean, why would they not give him an opportunity?
Yeah. But my point is, it's the fans that have trying to move him to guard, not the Steelers.
Oh, and no, there was a very prominent player that said something as well.
Yeah, of course. But that was his way of not criticizing the player. Do you guys realize? I mean, I think if you listen to Steelers Stat Geek this week, you would find this out. Do you realize that Kendrick Green is the highest drafted player on the Steelers offensive line last year?
Yeah, I heard you say that. I was actually stunned. I actually thought to myself, is that possible? And
we wonder why they were what they were. I broke it all down on Stat Geek when people want to know how much does the coach affect the play. I'm like, how much does yes, you can find guys like an Al Villanueva and like a Ramon Foster, but you can't have an entire line of them because you're not going to knock it out of the park every time with guys like that. But if you have guys like that you fill in with other, for the longest time, the Steelers had 2 1s and a 2. They had Pouncey, they had DeCastro, they had Marcus Gilbert. And their line was very good because they had that.
They are who we thought
Bryan, they were. Have we let Bryan answer this question? I can't remember.
We let him off the hook.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was Arthur Moats that reported that Kendrick Green said that he has every indication in his exit interview that they're keeping him at center.
Yeah.
And with this news that he's working out with Pouncey, they're trying to keep him at center and see how he makes that jump from 1 to 2. He's obviously serious about it. He's obviously working out already and working hard to play hard. So if that happens, then he could be the guy that we forget all about all the criticism from last year. I keep going back to this every single year. Not everybody, but most people, after they only saw him play about 2 or 3 games in 2003, thought Troy Polamalu was a bust and only knew about him because he was the guy with the long hair. 2004, he was on everybody's brain and he was a superstar.
Yeah.
Can I just say also about the Pouncey and Green thing? It says a lot about Green to either accept the invitation or to put himself in that situation, but it also says a lot about Pouncey to even want to work with the guy. So even if he reached out to Pouncey and said, "Hey man, would you mind, I'd love to pick your brain," Pouncey could be like, "Dude, you took my number the year after I left. You suck. No, I'm not doing that." And he did it. So that said, it's a two-way street there. I think that's very important. Dave, you disagree? And
I'm going to say the report was he checked with Pouncey before he did the number because he didn't want to disrespect him. So I don't know if that's really happened or not. But I know then people are saying, well, didn't Coach Tallman talk about his position flexibility? My thing is, if Kendrick Green does not work out as your starting center, then you can have him as a backup along the entire interior offensive line. So he's going to be one or the other. He really is. So you might as well just try to let him get going. I don't know if what Ben was talking about moving into guard meant he's not having to make the calls. He's not having to do this and that. But you also have to look at what the Steelers did. You're like, oh, look how great J.C. Hassenauer did in his first game when he was playing against the Browns. Look at the schemes that they ran in their blocking. They dumbed it down. They didn't ask him to make the same kind of calls that they were asking Green to do. It's kind of, but and then when they did the next week, it wasn't nearly as good.
Yeah. I really don't want to go down this Kendrick Green rabbit hole because I'm going to start getting fired up and I'm going to start yelling and screaming. So let's not do that. We'll save it for another one. Dave, you have a game to play.
Yes, I have a game.
Know what that is.
It's based on the title of the show. We were talking about players or coaches and position coaches and how important they are. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go back and forth. I still have a quick trivia after this, though. We're going to go back and forth. You guys can decide. You know what? Here we go. Pick a number between 1 and 10.
7.
4.
Brian wins. It's 2. It's always 2 for me. I don't know why.
Mason Rudolph.
Yeah. It's just always been 2. So Brian, you can go first. What we're going to do is we're going to see the Pittsburgh Steelers. When was the last year they won a Super Bowl?
2008.
2008. Back and forth, one at a time until either someone gets one wrong or they can't come up with anybody. And I'm checking them off. Name the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff. Go. Brian, give me one name.
I'm sorry, 2008?
2008.
Okay,
Oh my gosh. Why are you putting me against him? Like, this is not fair. I'm not good at this stuff. But we'll go and Brian will win. And go ahead.
I'll start with Bruce Arians.
That would be the offensive coordinator.
Mike Tomlin.
That would be the head coach.
Oh, cheap.
You left it for him? What are you doing?
It's true, you did.
Dick LeBeau, then.
That's the defensive coordinator.
Richard Mann.
And we are done. Brian officially wins. Richard Mann was not the coach in 2008.
Oh, I thought he was.
Let's see how much better. Let's keep going. Brian,
you just keep going. I'll stop playing.
John Mitchell,
who was the defensive line / assistant head coach. Jeff, can you think of any other ones?
2008. I think Dick Hoke had already retired, so that's not on there.
I was going to say Dick Hoke.
I don't
that
think
would
he was
be incorrect.
Okay.
Who was the running backs coach then? It wasn't Saxon. Was it
Kirby Wilson?
Kirby Wilson was the running backs coach.
Oh, Kirby Wilson, new coach of the Pittsburgh Maulers. Uniforms.
Yeah. Those uniforms are hideous, by the way. Those are disgusting.
Oh.
Horrible colors. Stupid shoulder pad. That's awful. That's worse.
Original colors.
It wasn't Darren Perry. Was Carnell Lake on staff?
Nope.
No.
Come on, you're missing another really easy one.
I had it at the top of my. Oh, Jerry O was still there, wasn't he?
No, he wasn't.
No, but you're getting closer.
Oh, no, Joey Porter wasn't there.
No, he wasn't there.
Keith
Butler.
There you go. Thank you. Who coached the linebackers?
I thought I already said him.
No. It's kind of hard, isn't it? And we're all up in arms about the Steelers' assistant coaches. And
you're talking about 2008. Dave.
They won the Super Bowl with this coaching staff. And that's what it really takes to win the Super Bowl.
I wasn't running behind the steel curtain, Dave. I wasn't running behind the steel curtain when I really know all this crap.
It's kind of making a point.
Was Randy Fichtner there?
Randy Fichtner was the wide receivers coach.
Oh, who was the quarterbacks coach is the question at that time. It wasn't Ken Anderson.
Don't say it. Say it.
It was Ken
Anderson. Was it Kenny Anderson?
Yeah. That's the quarterbacks coach.
I thought he retired before that Super Bowl, but I guess I was wrong.
Nope. You should know the tight ends coach.
Why is it same one? No, because Alfredo's there.
Until he retired last year.
He was there forever.
I don't know.
Eric Green.
Ready? No. You're ready to hear the rest of the coaching staff?
Yeah.
Okay. It was James Daniel was tight ends coach. If you remember from my stat geek this morning, Larry Zerline was the offensive line coach. And then Harold Goodwin was an offensive assistant. On the defense, you had, LeBeau, Butler, and John Mitchell. You didn't have Ray Horton as the defensive backs coach and Lou Spanos as a defensive assistant. You also missed, I'm going to mispronounce his name so bad, Bob Legashkeski as the special teams.
Doug Legursky?
Yeah, that's what I think of when I see it. And Amos Jones as the assistant special teams coach.
Amos Zeraway?
Remember Amos Jones?
Yeah. So it just kind of goes to show they win the Super Bowl, and we don't know half their coaches.
Well, Zerline, a lot of people didn't like him.
Yeah.
And that was not a good offensive line, and they did win the Super Bowl.
And they did. But remember, I mentioned it in my stat geek this morning. He had a bit of a scandal his first year there in 2007, where he inadvertently forwarded a inappropriate email to a bunch of people in the NFL, including Roger Goodell.
I remember that.
What was in the email?
They just I don't know.
Was there a photo?
I hope it wasn't a Skippy Reed type of pick.
All I know is that I think that email must have got sent to Daniel McCullers, and he held on to it for a long time.
Passing that to Ray McLeod now.
Yeah,
he's hitting the forward button.
You ready for a quick question?
Sure.
A quick trivia. As we all know, if you're looking at lifetime earnings as a Pittsburgh member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, that distinction goes to by far Ben Roethlisberger with how much he earned playing for the Steelers, and in his lifetime contract. This isn't active. This is just all time for Pittsburgh Steelers. Who's number 2?
Oh, number 2. I actually looked at this list not too long ago. They're currently playing, right?
No, not necessarily. This is all time. Anytime.
Oh, all time. I know Cam Hayward's up on that list pretty high.
He would be the number 2.
Yeah. I was going to say, I knew he was either 2 or 3 because I remember seeing that list. Yeah. And he deserves it too.
Yeah. 3 was Marquise Pouncey. 4 was Antonio Brown. 5 was Troy Polamalu. 6 was Lawrence Timmons. 7 was David DeCastro. And then shockingly, 8 was Stephon Tuitt.
He's been paid.
Yep. 9, Joe Hayden. And 10, Ike Taylor.
Joe Hayden.
TJ Watt will be moving up that list. He's actually 12th on the list right now.
He will be moving up rapidly.
Yes. So
just like all the sack records, moving up the list rapidly. All right, Brian, let's do your game.
All right, who's the man? First round pick by the Steelers in the 1994 NFL Draft.
94 first round pick. Why? I know. Jeff, we are terrible if we don't know this.
No, we're not. I was 11. I've got to pass.
This gentleman set the Colorado Buffaloes single season mark for receiving yards, which he teamed up with Cordell Stewart to rack up 1,149 as a junior.
It's not what was it Johnson? No.
Yeah, it's Johnson. It's Charles Johnson.
Charles Johnson.
Yep.
As soon as he said Colorado, I knew that was.
Made 2 catches against the Steelers in the 2001 AFC Championship game as a member of the Patriots. I did not know that.
Ooh, I didn't either.
So how about those apples? All right, let's try another one. Selected out of East Texas State University in the 4th round of the 1971 NFL Draft.
71.
This gentleman won 4 Super Bowl titles in a 10-year NFL career spent entirely with the Steelers.
Okay, hold on. Whoa. You said drafted in 71?
Yes.
4th round.
4th round. Out of round. I'm not going to remember the round, but you said 10 years with the Steelers, won 4 Super Bowls, right?
Yep.
I have a shot. See, no, it's not Ham. He was drafted too high. I'm going Dwight White.
This gentleman bounced back from pneumonia early in the week and recorded the only first half points in Super Bowl 9 when he sacked Vikings quarterback Fran Tarkenton for a safety. Mad Dog Dwight White. Nice job, David. Jeff, you get the participation.
I wasn't sure if he was 71, but I knew he was early 70s, and he wasn't drafted in the first couple rounds. So,
I'm laughing at Tyler. That's all.
What Tyler said.
Oh my god.
Okay, anyways, let's see final thoughts.
I was gonna say, or was it
Brian, go ahead with your final thoughts.
Okay, my final thoughts will be dedicated to the new uniforms of the Pittsburgh Maulers. But Jeff is going to make me not do that, so I'm not going to talk about the Pittsburgh Maulers whatsoever. Gosh, all I can say is it's February. We've got 136 looking at us in the live chat. Pat yourself on the back, because whether you agree or you disagree, you love the Steelers so much that you're hanging out with these three guys on a Thursday night, and you're listening to it on Monday afternoon, maybe as well, in your car, on the freeway, instead of something else. So thank you.
All right. Dave, final thoughts.
This was fun. I like talking about the Steelers. I like the questions from the fans. I like the banter that we have. If you're going to, I mean, what else are we going to do here during the offseason but come here, have a good time. I'm just glad that to look in the live chat and see some names there of a lot of people I know and some people that I haven't seen before. Maybe or maybe not. But appreciate all of you. I love that we all have different opinions and that we can say them. And you know what? It's okay if we're wrong, especially if it means that the Steelers win football games.
Yeah, good show, guys. Last week's show sucked, so it was a good rebound for us. So with that being said, those are my final thoughts. Make sure you check us out wherever you get your...
Man, flustered from the TJ Watt thing. Come on.
I know.
I'm never going to be allowed to pick a title again. I only do 20-some a week, Jeff.
Wherever you get your podcast, make sure you search Behind the Steel Curtain or Steelers so you get everything. Greg W. gives us $5, says Steelers Nation. Thank you for the tip. We do appreciate it. There is going to be a Sunday show, Reginald. We're setting that up as we speak. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks. Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
We'll see you next week for another Steelers preview. Take it easy, everyone.